Welcome to RuralStrong, where we talk real challenges and bold solutions in rural economic development. I'm your host, Joe Barker. Let's get into it. Welcome to RuralStrong. This is your podcast host, Joe Barker, and we're coming to you today from the Southwest Tennessee Development District podcast studio in beautiful downtown Jackson, Tennessee. And we are honored today to have the lead economic developer in the state of Arkansas with us. We have Clint O'Neal, who is the Executive Director of the Arkansas Economic Development Commission. Director O'Neal, welcome to RuralStrong.
Thanks, Joe. I appreciate you having me on the podcast.
Well, I appreciate you taking the time, and I know you're a busy man, and I've been looking forward to this conversation because I know the state of Arkansas has a lot of good things going on. But first of all, why don't you tell our audience about your background and what has brought you to your position today?
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity. I got my start in economic development in 2007. I was just a few years out of college and didn't have a real clear game plan at that point. I taught junior high math and science for a couple of years. I taught English in South Korea for a year. My wife and I came home from South Korea and we looked to get a game plan. I started a master's degree program at the University of Central Arkansas called a Master's of Science in Community and Economic Development. I was working a job in sales at the time, and I had this opportunity to come on board with the business development team at the Arkansas Economic Development Commission. I remember my boss at the time, he said, "We don't pay commission like you do in your sales job, but I want you hungry. I want you out there closing deals and working like a salesman who knows he needs to close this deal in order to eat." And so, I never really had the government mentality, always had the mentality of a salesperson, wanting to add value, but also wanting to compete. So I did that for about 4 years. And then I had this impression that unfortunately a lot of Arkansans have, that maybe the grass is greener on the other side. And so I took a job in Kansas City, Missouri. I really enjoyed my time there. I worked for an organization called the Missouri Partnership doing marketing and business recruitment. But there came a time in my life and in my career when my wife and I looked at each other and just said, we really need to move back to Arkansas. We want to raise our 4 kids in Arkansas. I want to be a part of the economic development community back in Arkansas. And so that was 2018, had this great opportunity to move back home and be the deputy director for AEDC. And then in 2023, had the opportunity to become executive director, working under Governor Sarah Huckabee Sanders and her administration and serving under our Secretary of Commerce, Hugh McDonald.
Well, you mentioned you were involved in sales, and basically, Director O'Neal, that's basically what we do every day, is it not?
That's right. That's right.
Selling the state of Arkansas. Let's talk a little bit. I want to talk about really 3 things I know that you're directly involved in, and that's business attraction, retention of and expansion of existing business, and also talk to you about entrepreneurship. So let's talk a little bit about business attraction and how the state of Arkansas approaches business attraction.
Yes, sir. Well, those are certainly the 3 legs of economic development. Everything that we do in partnership with our communities. Really pride ourselves on this being a state and local effort when we're out attracting businesses or when we're visiting with businesses in the state that may be looking to expand. Same for entrepreneurs. But with business attraction, we take a look at our target industries. There's a very diverse economy in Arkansas, but there are certain areas where we feel like we have particular strengths. We see a lot of projects in the food and beverage industry. We have a strong agricultural base that helps us certainly with that industry. We are growing significantly in the metals industry, in steel in particular, all across the state, but in Northeast Arkansas and Mississippi County is now the #1 steel producing county in America due to a lot of just good leadership locally, transportation, infrastructure assets. We do well in the forest products industry. There's a lot of our state that's covered with trees, great raw materials. Aerospace and defense is a really strong point for us. Great companies making products in that industry. Distribution and logistics, a lot of entrepreneurial activity, technology across the board, firearms and ammunition. But when it comes to business attraction, we want people first and foremost to know who we are and where we are and that we're open for business. And so for a small state like Arkansas, we feel like we almost have to have a little bit of a chip on our shoulder, go out, tell our story boldly and loudly to anyone who will listen through a number of channels. We do trade shows, we do social media, we do relationship building. When it comes to business attraction specifically, it tends to be that a little over half of the deals in our pipeline are brought to us by site location consultants. So we do all that we can to build relationships with site consultants, and then do all we can to build relationships with those company executives that either in the short term or the long term may have projects looking at our state.
Let me ask you, how important are incentives on both the state level and local level to attract new business?
Yeah, they're very important. I mean, I would say, just as the saying goes, that incentives can make a good deal better, but can't make a bad deal good. From our part, we want to create win-win partnerships. So not that we would ever say this at the negotiating table, but I think every economic development organization is thinking the same thing, that we want to win this project for the least amount necessary. So we're very sensitive and attuned to the fact that we're working with taxpayer dollars, and there's a lot of options that Arkansas can go in how to best utilize taxpayer dollars. We use taxpayer dollars for road infrastructure, for education. We use taxpayer dollars for a number of services that are so vital to Arkansans. And so for the taxpayer dollars that we use for incentives, we want to know that it has a really good return on investment, and we believe it does. We have a cost-benefit analysis model that we're always looking at to make sure anytime we use incentives, we're using them in a responsible way to get deals across the finish line, to help with infrastructure, training Arkansans, and just doing business in Arkansas more affordable and to the point that a company would choose us over other states.
Your state of Arkansas, much like my home state of Tennessee, we're surrounded by other states that are very aggressive in recruiting new business. Number one, do you study the incentives that other states offer, and then how do you try to set your part of state apart from the other states?
Yeah, it's a great question and a great observation. Same here. We're surrounded by states that are just great places to do business. Texas on one side, Tennessee on the other. Got 6 neighboring states that are all business friendly. Generally in this SEC country that we're living in, and kind of the Southeast, and I would include Texas in that. I guess you include Oklahoma these days since they're in the SEC also. Great places to do business, proactive governors when it comes to economic development. And then you have some other business-friendly states, but you certainly have several in the coastal areas that see themselves as a regulator of business, certainly not as a champion of business. And companies from those states, they just have such a great experience in the Southeast, because not only do you have low tax rates and favorable incentives, but you just have people that are hungry to be helpful, to help them make connections personally and professionally, help them be successful. And so for us, it's one project at a time. It's what kind of edge can we provide? When all things are equal, we're certainly studying other states, thinking about the incentive programs that they've offered in the past. The thing about state incentives is they're all transparent. You can kind of go out and get some comps of what other states have offered to similar sized deals. And so always thinking about how are we competitive when we know who we're competing against. A lot of times we don't. But, anything from having the best real estate option to the best workforce development strategies, showing how the value is higher in Arkansas with lower cost of doing business, lower cost across the board, and just to the extent that we can, out hustling our competition in the way that we provide customer service.
I know your state's like our state, and we see a lot of inquiries from data centers that want to locate, and many times they have a large capital investment, they use a lot of power, but maybe not create the number of jobs that we're accustomed to. What's the state of Arkansas's posture on recruiting those centers?
Yeah, so when it comes to data centers, we were not in the game at all until 2023. It was in the 23 legislative session that we passed a data center specific sales tax exemption. We refined that with some amendments in the 2025 legislative session. And so we actually just announced our first couple of major data center projects here within the last 6 months. And not ashamed of that at all. I mean, we've had other smaller data centers. We do not feel like we're late to the game, feel like we're in a really good position. We want to work with data centers who meet certain criteria, that it's ones that the community wants. We're here to support our communities. Some want data center development, some do not. And we want to work with data centers who are good corporate citizens. There are great utility companies in this state, and when a power agreement can be reached in a way that does not put Arkansas utility ratepayers at risk, then we're certainly agreeable to working projects. We do have, as I mentioned, legislation that's very favorable to data centers, provides, once thresholds are met of capital investment and payroll, provides a sales tax exemption in perpetuity. So no sales tax on utilities, on replacement equipment. It's incredibly advantageous. But, data centers are controversial all over the country. And so we want to make sure we're working with good, data centers who are good corporate partners for sure.
Much of Arkansas, like Tennessee, is very rural. And do you, in your position, do y'all make a concerted effort to focus on some of those rural areas that have been depressed for a number of years? I know Tennessee, for the last few years, has really focused on giving additional incentives to companies that actually locate in rural areas. How does Arkansas work with their rural communities?
Yeah, really same here. 75 counties in Arkansas. We want all 75 to be successful. So we do have our incentives broken out by tiers, tier 1, 2, 3, 4, meaning a less populated county, those that may not have experienced the same population growth or income growth as other counties would receive. Companies that locate in those counties would receive higher level of incentives, whether it means more income tax credits or more payroll rebates, depending on the program. So certainly when it comes to policy, some ways baked in to incentivize companies to look at rural communities. And then just from a personnel standpoint, something that we really have some intention behind, having our senior leaders, having our team across the board spend time across the state. We're gearing up for our Rural Development Conference here in May, where we'll have 500 or 600 leaders that are focused on rural economic development. It's something that we've always really put a lot of passion and purpose behind, is how do we provide professional development for local elected officials, local economic developers, specifically in rural areas. We've added a couple folks to our community development team, and they work closely with our rural development team on rolling out, whether it be programs or resources for our rural area. And then the last thing I'll mention on that is an entrepreneurship development program, a leadership training program called 75 Strong, where we are partnering with an entrepreneurship support organization to train local leaders specifically to help entrepreneurs. And so we have 58 leaders across the state, many in rural areas, that are going through this program, looking at ways in those rural areas, in addition to attraction and expansion projects, how do we help entrepreneurs in those areas?
All right, let's shift gears a little bit and talk about existing business expansion and our economic developers that are listening. We all know that the majority of the new jobs that are created come from existing businesses. So talk about Arkansas and their view on working with those existing business expansions.
Yeah, so any company would be wise to take care of its existing customers. And so we have a team here within the Arkansas Department of Commerce that's focused on existing business, kind of going out, taking the pulse of industry, taking the pulse of business around the state. We want to do that in close collaboration with our community partners. So always want to have good relationships with chambers of commerce and city halls and making sure we're working together on those business retention and expansion type outreach meetings. But we put a lot of effort toward just making sure companies know what's out there, the resources. And over the past several years, as we go out and we talk to companies, the number one thing that they would like help on from us is workforce development and just understanding what does it mean to have good connections with the local community college, with the university, with the local workforce board. How do you tap into opportunities with the state, with the federal government, with various training opportunities, whether it be apprenticeship programs or customized training programs, or just the everyday connections that can lead to good activity. And so we put a lot of our efforts when it comes to existing business behind workforce. And so the team here in Commerce called Workforce Connections spends a lot of time with those existing companies, helping them through everything from best practices on recruitment, retention, and training. And then the funding we put behind training, we feel like that's a really good investment for our funding to go behind, is just training Arkansans to be ready for the skills that are needed from actual Arkansas employers.
You mentioned something, Director O'Neal, apprenticeships, and how important is it to the state of Arkansas to have an active program that gets these young people into the workforce and gives them a taste of what they can expect?
Yeah, it's incredibly important. So I have 4 kids of my own, 3 teenagers and a 10-year-old. So I think about it every day. It's you have to take, for our young people, what they're interested in, what they're good at, and what real world job opportunities actually exist, and see if we can find the sweet spots, something that really covers all 3 of those. What I did not tell you in my opening is that my first college degree was a Bachelor of Science in Psychology, which led to waiting tables and then going to get a non-traditional teaching license. And so I stumbled around for a little while. I started my economic development career when I was 27 years old. If I would have had that sweet spot in college or earlier, I would have gotten started much sooner. So I think from a young age, we need to be gearing our young people around how do you go out and add value to the marketplace, and how do you acquire the skills in order to be able to do so. So that could be having your eye on a certain profession, could be having your eye on being an entrepreneur. But one way or another, we really need to drill down on how do you find that overlap, what you're interested in, what you're good at, and real world opportunities are. And I think apprenticeships are an excellent way to get started. So many Arkansans are incredibly successul outside of the traditional 4-year university route. If you go out and pick up a trade, you learn how to be an electrician, a plumber. You learn how the skill sets to work in one of the steel mills, and can be incredibly successful by developing a skill set. But that takes mentors, that takes good guidance, it takes the education and industry being on the same page. And we're just very optimistic about how apprenticeships work into that process.
Absolutely. I know you're very experienced in working with companies to bring them into Arkansas with the foreign direct investment. You've led trade missions overseas. talk about the state of Arkansas and how they work with these companies. And I guess my question is, do you actually have offices in other countries that promote the state of Arkansas?
We do, yeah. We have an office in Europe and a couple offices in Asia. So our office in Europe is in Germany, led by a gentleman named Dr. Cornelius Schnitzler, has been with the state of Arkansas for a number of years and does a great job for us generating leads for us to compete for all across Europe, building relationships so that when we spend time in Europe, whenever we have governor-led trade missions to Europe, we have receptions, fireside chats, one-on-one meetings that has led to really a lot of success. Same for Asia. We've had an office in Asia since 1985, now led by Neil Jansen, an Arkansan, who's lived in Japan for over 20 years, speaks fluent Japanese, does such a great job for us, leading all across Asia, and is based in Japan. And then just as of 2024, opened an office in South Korea. And so really optimistic about opportunities there. And so when we travel, especially with Governor Sarah Huckabee Sanders, really a known governor with prominent figure in our country and internationally, we can get in, really reach out, and we can open a lot of doors. She can open a lot of doors to visit with CEOs, and people are very interested in what she's doing with education reform and the success that we've had in economic development. So having a strong governor that leads international trips and gets personally involved in economic development recruitment projects is certainly an incredible asset for us.
Expand on that a little bit. Having a governor that is well known, I would suppose, when you get to talking with companies, it's always good to have that person to help close the deal. And how does Governor Sanders do that?
Yeah, Governor Sanders is so good at connecting with companies, making them feel welcome. Just as we're known for in the South, Southern hospitality. There was a leader of a company called Faymanville that made a site visit all the way from Luxembourg, and on the first site visit, his team mentioned that he's into classic cars, and so on the second site visit, the CEO himself, he was going to come in town, and she remembered that. She said, "I have a good friend with a classic car. I'm going to pick him up in a classic car," and it's customer service like that. It's hosting CEOs in her office. It's just that personal connection. It's getting out and about, whether it's domestic trade shows. We've been to the SHOT Show for the last couple of years, Firearms and Ammunition Trade Show in Las Vegas. We've done meetings around the country. We've done trade shows and trade missions to Europe, to Asia, to the Middle East, to Israel and UAE. And so, yeah, the way that Governor Sanders has the ability to connect with companies, build a personal relationship, and make a sales pitch has helped us tremendously.
How helpful is it to have a worldwide brand such as Walmart located with their headquarters in Arkansas? It's a brand everybody recognizes, and talk about the relationship between the state of Arkansas and a company such as Walmart.
Sure, it's a strong partnership, and we're so proud to have them in Arkansas. They recently opened up their world-class home office there in Bentonville, Arkansas. But, especially when we travel around the world and we ask the simple question, what do you know about Arkansas? As we expect, sometimes the answer is going to be not much, and that's okay. There's a small sliver of the population that they may have the wrong impression of Arkansas. They may have a negative impression. There's always going to be a percentage that has a positive impression. Maybe they've been here on vacation. They know why it's called the natural state. It's a beautiful state with great outdoor amenities. Maybe they have business connections and they've had positive experiences. But there's so many people that are in that middle ground, and they just say, honestly, I don't know that much about Arkansas. I have maybe a neutral to slightly favorable impression of Middle America or kind of the southeast part of America. But one thing I know that Walmart's headquarters are in Arkansas, And so you must be doing something right. That Sam Walton, as an entrepreneur, decided to build his business in Arkansas. Could have been anywhere, could have moved it anywhere, but decided to continue in Arkansas. They have the workforce that is innovative, that's hardworking, that can run a world-class company like Walmart from Arkansas. And so we've had a number of great Fortune 500 success stories from entrepreneurs like Walmart, J.B. Hunt, Tyson Foods, Dillard's, Murphy USA, and they all have wonderful stories that tie back to being great community partners and enjoying success given Arkansas's great business climate and great people.
All right, we've got about 5 minutes left, and with someone with your experience, as you look in your crystal ball, what's the greatest challenges that you see we face in the economic development world, say, over the next 5 years?
Yeah, it's a great question and something that we're always thinking about. We want short-term success, but we also want long-term success. As economic developers, sometimes we're thinking about the next board meeting, we're thinking about the annual scoreboard, we're thinking about how many deals can we close out of our current pipeline. And those are the right things to be thinking about when it comes to short-term success. But when it comes to long-term success, we really have to be thinking about what is the economy going to look like in the future. We have kids in the K-12 system today that are going to work in jobs in Arkansas and in Tennessee and all across our country, jobs that don't exist today. And so how do we best prepare our young people? How do we tie workforce development and the education system into the economy of tomorrow? And what does that look like for us today? I think that we're going to continue to have a country where we need to be proud that we make things here in America, and we want to be a part of that in Arkansas. And so when it comes to being ready for industrial growth, we've got to be thinking about our Arkansas Site Development Program and how we continue to help communities build out infrastructure and have sites that are going to be ready for industrial growth. We also have to be thinking about what is the world going to look like with the kind of whole world of remote work. And so from everything that we do, from broadband extension to expansion to quality of life measures, especially in our small towns in rural America, I think there's going to be opportunities to stay in that community that you love because of the opportunities for remote work. But it kind of all ties back to what jobs are going to be there in the next few decades and how we gear up from a skills standpoint, both on the hard skills and what we call essential skills, character development, soft skills, being able to show up early, stay late, have the character, have the grit. And it's one thing that Arkansas is known for is just being able to get the job done.
All right. We have listeners all across the country, and if they want to find out more about your department or Arkansas in general, is there a specific website that you can lead them to, or how can they gather more information?
Yeah, well, we hope they do. Our website is arkansasedc.com, and we're very active on LinkedIn, both with the Arkansas Economic Development Commission page and my personal page at Clint O'Neal. So I would invite anybody to reach out and connect with us.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, we've had a very enjoyable, all too brief conversation with Clint O'Neal, the Executive Director of the Arkansas Economic Development Commission. And Director O'Neal, I can see why Arkansas is moving forward. I appreciate you taking the time to be with us, and I wish you nothing but best of luck in the future.
Thank you, sir. Really appreciate it, Joe.
Have a great day.
All right, you too. Thanks a lot.
Thanks for joining us on Rural Strong. If you found this helpful, share it, and follow the show for more insights from rural leaders making a real difference. Until next time, stay rural strong.